Ready, set, go!
Registration is now open for the Middle States Commission on Higher Education 2023 Annual Conference. It's in Philadelphia, December 4th through 6th, 2023, setting the standard transformation through accreditation. You don't want to miss it. Register now at msche.org.
Surprise!
We're taking the EdUp Experience podcast to Insights EDU. Join us for an incredible higher education marketing and enrollment management conference, February 20th to 22nd in Phoenix, Arizona. Register now at insightsedu.com and use promo code EdUp to save $50 off your registration. Welcome back, everybody. It's your time to EdUp on the EdUp Experience podcast, where we make education your business. Your business. That's going to be a key phrase today, business, because of our guest co-host and our guest. But before I get to these amazing, incredible, fantastic people, I do want to remind everybody, first of all, to listen. So if you're listening now, that means you're listening. So we're part of the way there. But also, if you have not yet picked up the book that we wrote called Commencement, the Beginning of a New Era in Higher Education, that I wrote along with my co-author, Kate Colbert, and contributor, Elvin Freitas, who also is the co-founder of this podcast. It is on Amazon and available. And remember what we did. This isn't me. It's just not me saying a bunch of stuff in a book, because nobody would ever buy that. But we interviewed 125 college presidents and asked them all, what do you see for the future of higher education? And we wrote a book around those answers. And anytime I can bring one of those 125 presidents to the microphone to co-host with me, well, you're talking next level, ladies and gentlemen. I've got a next level guest co-host here. He is the one and only Dr. Stephen Spinelli. He is the president of Babson College. Dr. Spinelli, welcome back to an EdUp microphone.
You forgot to tell them that we were related, and that you have a moral obligation to build my career, because that was the best introduction I've had in my entire life.
Surprise!
The reality is we're not related, except through attitude.
That's right.
We both believe in the power of higher education and the importance of it in a civilized society, and the value of an entrepreneurial mindset, and pushing that forward and infusing more of the entrepreneurial mindset into education. So, Joe, I'm honored to be a co-host with you today.
Well, thank you. And of course, the reputation of Babson College is very amazing, very amazing. I just put those words together. It sounds pretty good, but it is incredible. And entrepreneur. Can you say that for me? Because it's not
entrepreneurship.
There we go.
Pathway to wealth creation.
Boy, I need to get another cup of coffee today. But the business mindset of the way you run the college, the mindset of the graduates, I mean, that is key, right? It's key to our economy. It's key to growing business. Somebody that knows a little bit about business is our guest today. We're going to bring him to the microphone right now. Here he is, ladies and gentlemen. He is the one and only Andrew Rosen, and he is the CEO at Interfolio. Andrew, welcome to an EdUp microphone.
Thank you so much. It's great to be here. It's fantastic.
Are you ready for all this craziness?
I am ready for the craziness.
This is lunacy.
But that's how we do it here at the EdUp Experience. Andrew, want you to take a minute. Let's level set for the audience. Tell us about Interfolio. What do you do, and how do you do it?
It's a great question. So let's see. Interfolio is an organization singularly focused on faculty, mostly in the four-year space. And we have been since 1999, when we launched our consumer dossier business, where scholars and faculty members go to aggregate and curate their materials to apply for faculty positions. And since then, we've built a pretty strong brand around faculty. Our perspective is that faculty drive all the revenue of a university, whether it's through teaching and learning in the form of tuition or through funded research. But likewise, they're the largest component of cost to a university. They're responsible for reputation and brand, but most importantly, rank. They govern the university in the form of shared governance. They're responsible ultimately for student success, and they're responsible for the success or failure around really important DEI initiatives. But there's never been a category of technology around faculty. So as we evolved our platform, we created a category around faculty and designed, sort of pioneered the faculty information system, which interestingly, Gartner recognized as one of the top 10 strategic technologies in higher ed in 2019. So we feel like we've uncovered one of the last untouched frontiers in ed tech. And so sort of the way we see it is that universities are like cities with extremely unique challenges. They struggle with hiring and competing for the most talented faculty. Shared governance and peer review is really hard, especially when it comes to hiring, annual reviews, promotion, mid-tenure reviews, tenure reviews. It's extremely artifact intensive. The typical hiring dossier can contain north of 25 artifacts to be reviewed by numerous committee members. It's historically been paper and binder based. They struggle with managing appointments, exception tracking for promotions, and managing the complicated life cycle sequences of their scholars. They struggle with mapping complex scholarly pathways around professional moments and life cycle events, especially at different colleges within the institution that have like differing ranks. Arts and sciences can be assistant to associate to full to tenure, and medical schools have clinical faculty, research faculty, and like how do you organize those ranks and classify them and so forth. And also, you think about managing scholarly activity data in a central place. It's hard. Like your profile data and certifications, degrees is in your ERP system. Your teaching data is in your student information system. Your scholarly output data is in the libraries and research information systems. Service data is in spreadsheets. Professional data is in CVs. It's rarely brought together to the benefit of a scholar or the institution. Generally, our platform consists of a series of modules: faculty search, review, promotion, and tenure, lifecycle management, activity reporting, and impact tracking, which comprise the first ever faculty information system. So at the end of the day, we help our clients recruit, hire, appoint, review and promote, manage complex career pathways with differing cadences and commitments, and manage, store, and understand all of the faculty scholarly activities and their outputs and contributions at the scholar, the unit, and the institutional levels. So kind of a singular view of their faculty.
So if I could summarize, you make really hard faculty stuff a lot easier to do. Because what you just rambled off, I'm like, it sounds like an incredible amount of work, both because it is, and we overcomplicate things sometimes in higher ed. There's a lot of overcomplication in the things that you said, and because of hundreds of years of process, or because that's the way we like to do things sometimes, which is, it's interesting to have Stephen here, because I think when you think from a business mindset, sometimes you go, why do we do it that way? So when you say faculty information system, what does that mean to me as somebody that's going, well, what's in it? What do you mean?
So really, if you think about the complex workflows around hiring, like it's all peer review and shared governance. You put those things together, and it gets really, really complicated. So how do you move the workflows forward? How do you standardize the workflows? How do you create transparency around all those workflows? Make it equitable across all your units. Like if you're a UCLA, you have 16 different colleges. Like, how do you create transparency and equity about how you review, promote, make tenure, and things like that? So we do the activity tracking that is used for all of those things. Also for faculty to tell their best story at the right times. And then we facilitate and manage those workflows digitally.
Don't like it is.
I like that, Andrew. You know, you're right? Faculty are the lifeblood of any institution. I think anybody that works in higher ed certainly knows that. But when you work outside of higher ed, you don't think about it and how complicated our processes can be. Stephen, you want to jump in here? I mean, because you're dealing with a lot of these complications on a daily basis. What do you think about all that?
Yeah, let me ask you a framing question, Andrew. You talked about shared governance. I don't know that the general population understands what shared governance means. I'm not so sure that different colleges agree on what shared governance is. Within many colleges, there are varying definitions of shared governance. What do you mean by that?
So I think of shared governance is universities make a lot of decisions by committee, okay? And those committees are made up of academics, faculty members, whether they're teaching-centric, teaching and research-centric, or research-centric. And so a typical hiring committee can have 8 different members from a department making an evaluation, doing an academic evaluation, almost like looking at their peer and saying, who are we going to admit to this club? And it's often, if you think about it, it's a 30-year, $3 million decision we're making. Okay, that's just on hiring. So when I say shared governance, a lot of decisions at a university are made sort of in a committee orientation, which we call service. So what faculty members do is teaching, research, and service. And then you could throw on professional activities as well. But I sort of look at it and I say there's really 5 categories of activities that scholars do, that faculty members do. They teach, they do research, they do service, they have professional activities, they do a decent amount of mentoring. It can be fairly complex in how you balance that, which is one of the reasons why faculty engagement has been down. Like, how do you balance that? It's hard.
And so your software, your program will make the system of assessing the quality of the inputs. Is this professor doing their job, and at what level are they doing it? It'll be easier to assess. It'll assess it more accurately. It'll assess it faster. And then what's the impact on that professor's life? And frankly, what is the impact on the business model we call a college?
So we facilitate the technology that digitizes the process for the committee members. They get for example, all the artifacts in a tenure review could be voluminous across multiple different sections. Your statement of teaching, your statement of research, I could go on. Statement on diversity, could go on. Stephen, I'm sure you are absolutely familiar with this process.
Submerged in it.
So our technology digitizes that process. And then, when you go from department or sub-department to department to dean at the college level, and then dean to the provost, and then provost to the president and trustees, it's a process. And then if you're doing, for example, animal or human research, you have ethical reviews, and ad hoc committees could be thrown in. So it can get fairly complex. So, for example, arts and sciences might have a template with what is their assistant to associate, and then the scholar would complete their dossier, which would move through the first committee. They could share it with a mentor and say, am I presenting myself the right way? And then there's assessment frameworks in our technology and forms capability. So, for example, I've seen community colleges use our forms and go into the classroom to review teaching and subject to a form on an iPad. So we facilitate the digitization process of that entire review capabilities. And then also when you're actually keeping all of your activity data in an activity reporting system, we can pre-populate VITAs and move them into that process and say, so for example, in an annual review, it's like, what'd you do this year? Okay. And are you living up to your commitments against your teaching, research, and service expectations? And if it's a mid-tenure review, let's look what you did over the last 3 years. And so if you're keeping your activity records up, it's just an easy pull into your template, into a promotion template. Or if it's a tenure, we look back 6 years typically. Some institutions I've seen 4, but mostly it's around 6 years on a tenure review.
I have to say, I don't know if we have to cut the episode here, but I gave Stephen a list of questions, and I told him not to ask the 2 that he asked because those are the 2 I wanted to ask to sound smarter than he was.
I thought you said those are the ones you want me to ask.
Would you stop screwing around?
It's essential that I sound smarter than the guest co-host. That's not going.
Well, that's easy.
Going well.
You won't know.
Yeah, it's not going well so far. Honestly, when I hear you talk, you said you're talking about faculty. You said it's a 30-year, $3 million decision. Then you're talking about tenure, and one of the, I don't know if it's common, but certainly there's the adjunctification of faculty, right? The move away from tenure as a fixed cost for many higher ed institutions. Is that a threat to the business? Is that a trend of the way the education is moving? Are those schools just not working with Interfolio or adjuncts in here too? Can you talk about the different types of faculty and how you might be working with them at different levels?
Sure. Well, I think the way most institutions, and Stephen, keep me honest here, most institutions look at tenure and non-tenure track faculty, and then there's full-time and there's part-time. And then you could look at part-time non-tenure track faculty and say, is that adjunct? But adjuncts very often supplement around specialty arenas. So, I mean, I have a law degree, and a lot of my professors, like for the taxation of financial instruments, were they brought in from the big law firms that did the taxation of financial instruments. So there's very, very different types of faculty. Then you have research-centric faculty and you have teaching-centric faculty. And so they really, and then when you get into medical schools, you then have clinical faculty, non-clinical faculty. So it really can get fairly complex, but your point is correct. I think there's pressure on tenure in this era. I think you're seeing the decrease in the amount of tenured faculty, and tenured, is a pretty important thing. Actually invented in America way back early in the 20th century, but it was about protecting academic freedom. Okay, and that was really the concept. And so I believe tenure is a very, very important component to the evolution and the future of higher education, number one. But two, I also think we have to expand the ways and the data that we look at for achieving tenure. And Stephen probably knows there's a whole track, I believe it's PTIE, promotion and tenure based on innovation and entrepreneurship. Looking at like what companies did you start, what patents did you get, things like that. And I think that's really, really important because that actually makes what I would think higher ed real. So.
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the points I wanted to bring out, and then I'll kick it back to you, Stephen, is we in higher ed, we like to blanket term things. Students is the best example of that. We say the students. There's all different types of students. Or we'll say higher education. What kind of institution are we talking about? We say faculty. There are many different types of faculty, and sometimes we lump them all together. And you did a really good job of laying it out better than I ever could. But that makes a difference in how you serve them, the activities you have to go through, the way you approach things. That's a good point. Stephen, over to you.
Andrew, the use of your data could be really interesting, not just from a human resource management perspective, but a human resource development perspective. If generally speaking, if we can be more textured in how we assess people and where they might fit in a portfolio of teaching, research, and service, we could have a more textured and maybe more effective company organization, higher education. Do you foresee the data? How do you foresee use of the data if you were to be expansive about that thinking over the next 5 or 10 or 20 years?
Before you answer, let me get you ready.
You will learn by the numbers. I will teach you.
Okay, now go.
I mean, there's a number of things to think about it. I mean, when you think about that question resonates because with the introduction of AI, it can be used in really, really interesting ways, and it can be used in really what I would say, I don't want to say harmful, but ways that it's just probably not appropriate. So, for example, as we move towards more of analytics, okay, and I can now look at the field-weighted citation index of a scholar or the H index of a scholar, and okay, the thing is that really lends itself to how we look at STEM faculty, because in arts and humanities, we're producing books, not so many publications. I know, for example, a chemistry professor who's got a 80-page CV.
Outrageous.
Okay, extremely STEM centric. So the question about like equity becomes important, but the move towards analytics, and for example, can I look at your portfolio and predict whether you'll make tenure? Like, it's not a good use. It's not a good use of data. It's not a good use.
Yeah.
So we have to be really, really careful, and making sure that we're looking at the qualitative work, and how their peers review it, rather than saying, let's do it by the numbers. People, it's just not an appropriate way to do it.
Andrew, let's flip that just quickly. A question that flips the analysis to the demand side. If I have an 18-year-old student, or if I'm a 30-year-old student that wants to go to graduate school, could I use your data to say the shape of that faculty really is going to impact me, because I now know more depth and texture of what they do? Can you see your data being used in that way?
100%. So, for example, the data in our activity reporting platform, for example, can be moved over to Orchid, for example. And Orchid is let's call it a global repository of researchers and sort of their scholarship and so forth. But then when you think about it, we're in the process of building sort of robust web profiles that I can say, I want to look at this department and I want to look at their topic topologies. What do they teach? What do they specialize in? Like, how prominent are they in that particular area? And then I can look at like their outputs and their outcomes and hopefully their impacts there. And I say, wow, that I want to go there.
Should you register for the Middle States Commission on Higher Education annual conference this December 4th through 6th in Philadelphia?
100%.
I agree, because the title of the conference is called Setting the Standard, Transformation Through Accreditation. There is no time like the present to explore opportunities in higher education and the future for our students and our business model. Get out and network with your peers this December 4th through 6th at the Middle States Commission on Higher Education annual conference.
Attention.
Are you ready to elevate your institution's marketing and enrollment strategies? Join the EdUp Experience podcast at the Insights EDU conference, February 20th to 22nd in Phoenix, Arizona. Don't miss out on this opportunity to hear from engaging speakers from industry-leading companies like Google, LinkedIn, Adobe, and higher ed leaders. Learn the latest marketing and enrollment strategies to grow your programs. Register now at insightsedu.com and use promo code EdUp to save $50 off your registration.
Attention.
You know, the recent rankings by the Wall Street Journal, and you can edit this out, Joe, if you feel so compelled.
I never edit. We don't like to edit things out.
The Wall Street Journal was much more, the recent rankings were much more about what the results were of the education. So versus inputs, the high SAT or high GPAs, or all of that is, did they get a job, what they get paid at, what is their trajectory in their careers?
Yeah.
You know, what was the benefit, how many graduated in what period of time? I can see the linkage of your data saying, if we can be more efficient, then the return on investment for this student, the value proposition will be clearer, and therefore the return better.
Yeah, it's interesting that you say that. Our steering committee, which is made up of provosts and senior leadership from about, 12, 15 institutions, we once asked them, do you have to make an ROI case to your chief business officer when you want to make an investment in technology or something? And their answer was, and I think it's relevant here, their comment was, return on investment, ROI? No, we have to make an impact on investment decision. And I thought that was really, really fascinating. And I think that goes to what you were implying, Stephen. It's sort of the impact that it will have on my life.
Yeah, beautifully stated.
Bullseye.
Yeah.
I just want to mention that, I don't know if Stephen, you're going to have to correct me on my memory here, but I think Babson College came out 10th on that WSJ.
You are again proving your scholarly chops. Yes, we were in the top 10 on that.
That's great. Done. That was great. Congratulations.
Andrew, just to shift real fast, because I want to talk about the dossier, Interfolio dossier a little bit, because there's a knowledge management piece to this, to your software. When you think about all the artifacts, all of the things that a faculty member does, all of the areas that they cover, where does it all go? How do I keep track of it? I haven't done that many things, and I have trouble keeping track of things. I got to call Stephen for advice most of the time. But, how do I keep track of my 700 articles that I've written and where the citations are, and if I guess what I'm asking is, if I enter into Interfolio as a faculty member and I start caching all of my stuff there, is it going to ultimately make it easier for me to get a job, to get 2 jobs, to move jobs, to be more valuable in the job that I have because I have higher speed access to the materials that I've put forward, instead of having to go back and look on my disk drives that I can't find, all that did I say disk drives? You know what I mean? I mean the little sticks.
You mean the 3.5 or the 5.25 ones?
Yeah, you know what I'm talking about when I say that, right?
Yeah.
Do I look like I know what a JPEG is?
You get the question.
Yeah. So interestingly, the problem that we set out to solve when we were building an activity reporting system was that the administration goes to their faculty numerous times a year and says, "Hey, can I get all of your activity? Like whether it's for media, whether it's for media requests, or whether it's for annual reviews, or whether it's for this," or so that they just kept getting burdened with requests, and they're like, no, stop, no. So we wanted to build a system that can basically be a repository of a consistent repository of activity data, so that can be used to the benefit of the scholar, but also to the benefit of the institution. And so, yes, having it centralized and being able to share it, or having it be able to be searched across the institution. Like if I'm looking for a scholar for cross-disciplinary research, like we make it much easier because I can find who else is doing biomechanics, but not in the biochemistry arena. So sometimes it's not always obvious, especially in very large organizations. So yeah, data is used all the time for many different purposes at an institution.
Isn't it? It really is. And sometimes for no purpose. We are not sure what we're doing with the data. What about faculty in general? What are the trends you're seeing? Are not unlike other industries, we have a lot of resignations out of higher education. It's hard to hire people. Yeah. It's harder to find good people. I think the same goes for faculty. It's hard to find, especially if you're talking about AI or cybersecurity. Those faculty are very hard to find. Do you see faculty wanting to? That would have been stupid if I finished that question. Do you see faculty wanting to teach? But I think what I'm asking is, are professionals moving into teaching? Are teachers staying in teaching? Are they leaving the industry? What trends are you seeing?
I can cite 3 numbers, and they're not great because they're sort of post-COVID. But first of all, 66% of faculty report feeling burned out. Okay. Workload, very long workload hours. 77% of faculty said that it's a less appealing industry to work in. And 73% of tenured faculty members moved up their retirement date. So interesting. On the other hand, most faculty and academics I know are extremely passionate about what they do and the impact that they have on students and the broader impact they have on the world. And it's a calling. What's one of the things I find really fascinating about faculty in universities is, one, does the faculty member work for a university, or is the university a vessel for my greatness? And so reconciling those two things are really, really important. So I think one, it's a really hard job. It's a really, really hard job. So some faculty think that teaching is like a requirement, and I really want to do my research. And some teaching is a calling. It's never the same. But teaching, research, and service is generally where it's comprised of, and hopefully the expression of impact, the feeling of impact that they're having, whether it's through student success or student outcomes, or whether it's through their research outcomes and impacts. I think it's a calling.
Does that stuff resonate with you, Stephen?
Yeah, it does. Both the challenge and the motivations around it. The reality is, if we stop believing in learning or education, I think we're doomed as a society. The hope is in enlightenment. And I think the best vehicle in the history of the world is colleges and universities.
Yeah.
Maybe second to moms and dads, but after moms and dads, I think it goes to colleges and universities. And I think some of the great hope of the technology interface, very much like what you're doing, Andrew, is that it may allow colleges and universities to be more textured in how they develop their human resources.
Mm-hmm.
That you could have professors of practice that have clearly defined capabilities that we expect, and experiences and outputs, and can be measured. And people who are concentrating on teaching, we could have a relationship that says, listen, I'm going to be a teaching heavy pathway, and that means I'll be evaluated in this way, or I'm going to be research heavy and I'll be evaluated differently. It's so hard to do now. With a better understanding and use and storage of data, I think that becomes a more natural part of what a college and university is, and then we become more fulsome, and maybe we keep people within the area of passion that they're best suited for.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. I agree with that 100%. And I think there have to be tenure pathways for all the various types. So I feel pretty strongly about that. Somebody said to me about, I don't know, 6 months ago, head of a department at a very, very prominent R1 institution, said, teaching is how you keep your job. Publishing and research is how you get promoted. And I'm like, wow, that's such a jaded perspective.
Yeah. In my experience, and it's been fun coming back to Babson. I was a student at Babson, then a professor, then left for 11 years, and then came back to be president. The relationship with the old students, my students, I call them, I own them. We do that. It's interesting in higher education. Professors really do feel ownership of their students' learning. That was reconnecting with those students that I had over 14 years of teaching at Babson, was the most fulfilling part of the job. It was sort of the capital gain, using my part, the capital gain of being an academic. Mm-hmm. was that piece of it. And that keeping, it's a strange statement, keeping colleges human is sort of important to me.
Yeah. Yeah, 100%.
How does this work, Andrew? I'm sitting here, I'm listening. I'm an administrator. I say this sounds really good for my faculty to be engaged in something like this because they'll be interested in it. Or I am a faculty member at an institution that is not partnered with Interfolio. Can I still be part of this? And who is the market? How do you work with individual faculty versus an institution?
So our dossier service is it's pretty much the original and pretty much the only sort of service that enables a scholar to aggregate their materials into various sections, tell their best story to apply for a faculty position. We ultimately want to get it to a fielded capability so that we can parse the CV, get your fielded data in there that can then be used bidirectionally with ORCID. Okay, so you can, what your institution or your research is requiring, we can facilitate. We'd like to do that. So, but right now it's being used by faculty for getting faculty positions. And then it's also interestingly used by life sciences students to apply to medical school, vet school, and then universities actually that want to supplement their life science students' dossiers, because very often they want to look at the recommendations. They want to make sure the packets is done well. It's also done, like, for example, Fulbrights are, many universities will get involved in helping the students put their packet together for that. So it's used by life sciences students, faculty predominantly, to really to aggregate their materials, but also to solicit their blind letters of recommendations, otherwise known as blind referee letters. So when you're applying for a faculty position, you typically need at least 3 blind referee letters on your behalf that go to the committee for review. Also, for example, in tenure reviews or and promotion reviews, they also do external peer evaluations by experts in the subject, and so our technology enables those sorts of outreaches.
Can I ask him a question about the business model? I can't help it. Coming from Babson College,
I was hoping for it.
It's painful for me not to understand a little bit more of the business model. Do you do subscription model? Do you do annual fee? How do you build your revenue?
We are from a business perspective, you would say we are EdTech SaaS, software as a service, multi-tenant, and we do annual subscriptions based on the modules that you use, what problems you're trying to solve.
So you can build lots of different. It's not one size fits all. I can build different modules in depending on who
Correct.
Our
view is that every institution has a different view for what is in their faculty information system, and we want to be able to support that.
Yeah, that's terrific. What is your trajectory? How many schools are you servicing? And
we're exact number changes day to day, but we're around.
We're going to need an exact number, Andrew. Exact number. No.
We're around 450 institutions. Handful have all 4 or 5 modules. Then many have 4 modules, 3 modules, 2 modules, and then a declining amount have 1 module, because they typically, like, once faculty start going through digitized work streams, they're like, why are we still doing this with paper or in Google Drives, or the people are using their Blackboard system for purposes of doing their promotion and tenure reviews, and it's not right. So
again, I can't help myself. Are you privately held? Are you venture money? How are you held, and what's the future look like?
Great question. We've been private equity backed historically, but we were acquired by Elsevier a year ago, just over a year ago.
And you're still with the company?
I'm still with the company. I am passionate.
Nailed it.
That's great.
That's awesome.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Yeah, they've been a fantastic partner and a fantastic springboard for us. Fantastic relationships, but being able to bring Scopus into our products, and they have products like SciVal, so we can empower deans and department chairs to see views of their academics in really interesting ways. So it's been really, really great for us.
It's a pretty good business model, because when you think about extracting it, like if you say, you know what, it's no longer working for the faculty, it'd be very hard to do that once you have faculty start using it over years and years and years. Yeah. So it's a business model that keeps giving and giving and giving, and it would be hard to, if somebody says, I don't want to do this anymore, there's going to be a lot of people that love the product, so you're going to have a lot of staying power. Yeah,
exactly. And I think higher ed's interesting that way. A lot of people don't understand. I mean, I have a really interesting history with higher ed going back to 1998. But for SaaS technology or software companies, because universities are made up of faculty, shared governance, like it's really hard to inflict change upon faculty members. So
how dare you?
Yeah.
Say that about us.
Surprise.
It's the truth, isn't it? It's harder to get something. It's hard to get something in, and it's doubly hard to get something out. If because there's the old thing, it's easier to give something than it is to take it away.
Right.
It goes for students too.
Well, it's interesting, Andrew, interesting rhetoric. Inflicting change. It is it's an interesting combination of words.
Yeah. So, yeah, I think a lot of faculty see it that way.
That's a fact. That's a fact.
Stephen, any final questions for Andrew before we wrap him up?
A big vision of what the future of higher education is. We're coming up, please, from COVID in what might have been one of the most traumatic impacts on the industry in the history of the organizations. There's credible price pressures around everybody. There's access and equity questions that are really nagging. The SCOTUS. where do you see this going?
Where do I see this going? So I don't think we're ever going back pre-COVID. I think we're never going back. That's one. Two, the importance of technology and digitization. I'll try and get it out again. Is critical. Is key. I know some of the most enlightened CIOs of universities believe that they should be managing subscriptions like librarians, not managing servers. Okay, so that's one. Two, I think, for example, the AACSB, which is the accreditation body for business schools, started to move their accreditation methodologies more towards impact. And I think universities are going to start thinking about impact, and I think impact should become more important when it comes to rankings, for example. And so my impression is like there's a delineation between outputs, publications, books, and between outputs and outcomes, patents, and then impacts, lives saved, gallons of drinking water created. And I think we have to move to sort of like, what did my students do and how have they changed the world, and have I impacted the world through my students, for example? And so I think the AACSB is onto something really, really interesting. And I think the future of education, it's one of the ways we're gonna get away from, what is it, 51% of people in America today don't believe in the value of a higher education, of higher education. I think once we start understanding the impact that we're having on society and the world, or even our communities, I think that pendulum will flip and will remain flipped.
Beautifully stated.
Well done.
Thank you.
To close us out, Andrew, I want to give you an open mic. Anything you want to say about Interfolio that you can dream up right now? Take some time. Tell us what you have to say.
I appreciate that. I actually didn't prepare an answer for that for that question. I just want to say, like, we have some really, really great people at Interfolio, really passionate, really dedicated. I think the evolution of the faculty information system over the next 5 years in partnership with our clients is going to be really, really interesting, especially with the backing of Elsevier now and the resources that they have. So it's you never underestimate the power of what really smart people can do who are passionate. So I want to say, like, basically thank you to the team that surrounds me and makes us do good things for our clients every day.
Well said, my friend. I have to tell you guys, this was an absolute pleasure, Andrew, to hear what you're doing in Interfolio and to have Stephen along co-piloting with me. Ladies and gentlemen, as I outro him, he comes in legend, he leaves a legend. He's Dr. Stephen Spinelli. He is the president of Babson College. Continuing to grow. Stephen, thanks for joining me, man.
What a pleasure. You guys are great smiles, great minds, great visions of the future. I'm going to go back and work harder.
I just want to say thank you, Joe and Stephen. Really, really fun talking with you today.
Well, let me outro you my proper way here. Ladies and gentlemen, he's Andrew Rosen. He is the CEO of Interfolio. If you haven't heard of him before, you've heard of him now. I suggest you check it out. They're doing great work. Andrew, did you enjoy the EdUp Experience version of a podcast?
I did. I want to graduate and be a co-host.
Hey, man, you know what? Any past guest can co-host anytime they want, and you can come and join me for the ride, too.
All right.
That's great.
All right, we'll be in touch. So you can't say it if you don't mean it, because then I'm going to be like, Andrew, I need your help. You got to co-host with me.
Got it. You got it.
And Stephen, like, this was a trial. I think you knocked it out of the park.
Thank you.
Can you imagine if I got somebody on and I was like, sorry, you didn't do a good job. No, you really crushed it. You really crush it. And so if you want, you can come back anytime.
I love you, man. This is a lot of fun. You're doing important. You got to do important work, but having fun doing it keeps you going through the hard times. And this is really enjoyable. You're a good host. And
we'll leave you with that, ladies and gentlemen. Final thoughts. You've just EdUp'd.
Oh, yeah.
The Middle States Commission on Higher Education 2023 annual conference is in Philadelphia, December 4th through 6th. Setting the standard, transformation through accreditation. Remember, only you can create transformation through networking, knowledge sharing, opportunity, leadership, service, learning, and accreditation. And you'll do all those things at the Middle States Commission on Higher Education annual conference this December 4th through 6th. Can't wait to be there. EdUp will be there. There's going to be over 1,300 attendees, presidents, provosts. The networking opportunities are off the chain. Register now at msche.org.
Oh, yeah.
Attention higher ed marketing and enrollment management professionals. We are taking the EdUp Experience podcast to Insights EDU. Join us at Insights EDU on February 20th to 22nd, 2024 in Phoenix, Arizona. Gain insight into the latest higher education trends and cutting-edge marketing strategies that'll take your institution's enrollment to a whole new level. This is your opportunity to connect with higher education leaders and marketing experts from across the country. Comprehensive presentations, engaging panel discussions, and more. Insights EDU will equip you to position your institution for growth. Register now at insightsedu.com and use the code EDUP to save $50 off your registration. Can you afford to miss this conference?
I don't think so.